Today, we're going over stories of people who went to extreme lengths to take justice into...
Alright, first of all, jeez, this is crazy. Someone needs to fix that man's teeth, give him some braces.
To their own hands. Oh, and I'm back. John Brown.
Who is John Brown?
It's 1812, and a 12-year-old boy named John Brown is delivering a herd of cattle that he'd just driven over 100 miles to the home of a U.S. Marshal.
Yo, imagine, okay, so you're born in Texas in the 1800s. You're driving cattle for hundreds of miles. Like, imagine that. Like, there are most of the months you're not seeing your family unless your family works with you. Like, bro, you are not and then you get sick during that, oh, it's game over. You're just gonna die from sickness.
The marshal is impressed that such a young boy was able to do this all alone and invites him to stay with him for a few days before making the trek.
Oh, no, bro. If somebody invites you to stay at your house and they have a single tooth like this, bro, don't do it. Oh, wait, he also has a single tooth. Maybe his dad. Wait, no, it's not the same facial structure. Still don't do that.
Back to Ohio. John is tired from the journey.
Ohio? Hello?
And the marshal seems friendly, so he agrees. And together they enter his home. Inside, John sees a boy around his age dressed in ragged clothing. He excitedly rushes over to introduce himself, and the boy, though nervous at first, eventually warms up, and the two begin to play.
Do they all have this dumb-ass tooth? This single dumb-ass tooth, like, right here? Like, he has this... Like, they all have this single dumb-ass tooth. Like, is that what this guy's niche is? Like, single teeth?
Together. This boy was smart, kind, and gives John some things that he'd made as gifts. Soon it's dinner time, and the marshal calls for John to join him, and the guests he invited at...
Yeah, I think that's his thing. He has one tooth. That's chipped tooth.
The table. John's new friend serves them while the marshal praises John in front of his friends. This boy drove all that cattle out there over 100 miles all by himself.
Over 100 miles. Also a good turkey, though. They're not eating the turkey, yo. And also, this is not the same as this. What is happening? That bread looks mad suspicious. I don't trust it.
He beams as if John were his own son. The dinner is wonderful, filled with laughter, and eventually the guests leave to head home. John is smiling, full and content. But as the marshal closes the door behind the last of his guests,
he enslaves the boy. Plot twist. He enslaves him.
A dark scowl emerges on his face. He turns to John's friend, the boy, and he begins berating him for the mistakes he had made during dinner service. The boy is terrified as the marshal walks to the fireplace and grabs an iron shovel. Without hesitation, the marshal turns and begins viciously beating the...
What? Yo, that's a child. In front of another child, though. Like, would you, like, at least ask the kid to step away? Be like, oh yeah, I have to deal with this. Can you go step outside for a little bit? But no, he's like, what are you doing here? Grabs a thing. Well, not what are you doing here, but like, he grabs a shovel. Oh, it's an iron shovel, so let's go do extra damage. Oh no.
The boy with it. John watches helplessly as his friend is hit over and over again.
Look at that kid's face. Imagine the trauma you get from that. Like, bro, the trauma. You make a new friend, and then their parent just beats him with a shovel in front of your face the first time you're at their house. Bro.
And the sound of the shovel ringing out against his skull echoes in the room, and he can smell the boy's blood as it begins to pour from a wound on his head. In that moment, the cruelty of the world his parents had warned him about becomes crystal clear. The Browns were Calvinists, and they had told John that slavery was an abomination against God. Though he'd heard those words countless times, this night was the first time he had seen its horrors.
Yo, that guy is mad. Yo.
He'd heard those words
He sounds like Joe Bartolozzi one. Joe is just over here raging like, what are you doing? Flashlight. Bro, he looks like Joe Bartolozzi. Got the same hair and everything. Just 100 years before, and Joe Bartolozzi doesn't hit slaves or own them. But bro, that vein kind of looks like it.
Countless times, this night was the first time he had seen its horrors with his own 2 eyes. At that moment, John Brown silently decides there is no greater evil in the world than slavery, and that he'll wage an eternal war.
Yo. How mad do you have to be to just... I should probably stop yapping. How mad do you have to be for, like, you to be mad like this with crying and being mad like this? How bad does
Or to end it.
have to be?
The 1800s in America were a very uneasy period, to say the least. Tensions between the northern free states and southern slave states were rapidly escalating, and his father, an abolitionist, had begun helping escaped southern slaves by sheltering them as they made their way through the Underground Railroad. Because of this upbringing, John had learned to treat every person of color with dignity and respect. And so everywhere he went, he was quick to befriend freed slaves and Native Americans. At the age of 16, he set out to make it on his own as a man. He moved from city to city, trying his hand at various businesses, all of which seemed to fail eventually. He popped out 20 kids between 2 wives, and perhaps
20 kids between 2 wives? Imagine that. Like, bro, the average amount of kids someone has, like, in America, like, what is the crap, like, amount of kids per family? Yeah, search. Okay. $1.9. Like, do we have, like, a kid, like a full kid, and then a kid with missing a foot? Like, what's that? 1.9. Like, anyway, 1.9. Oh yeah, I know this is like a few years ago, or like many years ago actually, like over 200 years ago. But like, jeez, bro's getting that work in.
perhaps most importantly to him, he did whatever he could to help slaves escape to a better life in the North. In 1829, Brown was operating a secret safe house for the Underground Railroad in Pennsylvania. One day, some neighboring white families came safe house for the
Yo, it's a nice house. Like, kind of reminds me of the farmhouse from The Last of Us. Like, get that hill, has some forest all over there. That's nice, to be for real. Nice house.
Underground Railroad in Pennsylvania. One day, some neighboring white families came over and asked for his help in driving out some Native Americans from their lands. Disgusted by the request,
Yo, he got that same thing from the guy earlier. Yo, this guy, bro, he's about to go. Bro, don't get this guy mad, bro. He's about to grab that and go psh, 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 into their skulls. Boom, like they're zombies. But bro, no, I'm not messing with this man. This man gets mad at me after I ask him to do something. Oh no. Wait. He is full, all of his teeth now. They're still missing teeth. Maybe it has a theory for another day.
he answered back, "I would sooner take up my gun and help drive you out of the country."
Absolutely flabbergasted over here. Like, what?
But as much as John Brown hated racism, half of the country felt exactly the opposite way. Slaves were essential to the economy in the South, and with the 3/5 Compromise of 1787, which classified slaves as 3/5 of a person, Southern states quickly gained disproportionate political power in Congress. This led to the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, which required Northerners to capture and return escaped slaves to their owners. Upon hearing the news, John Brown could not believe a law so heinous was passed, and for the first time in his life, he questioned if the pacifist views held by his fellow abolitionists would be enough to bring the changes required to right the wrongs being done in this country. In response,
Bro's on his villain arc over here. Going around with that pacing, mad look. Oh no, you know he's on his villain arc.
he forms a group called the League of Gileadites, an armed group who defended escaped slaves from slave catchers. They are successful, but as hard as he tries, Brown can see that the future of the country is growing increasingly grim. In 1854, Congress passes the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which left the decision on whether those territories join the Union as a free state or a slave state up to a popular vote. Immediately, pro- and anti-slavery settlers rushed to Kansas to try to sway the voting in their favor, and amongst the anti-slavery settlers were 5 of John Brown's sons. More pro-slavery settlers pour in from Missouri and begin terrorizing anti-slavery settlements, and Brown's sons write to him asking him to come to Kansas to help the cause. Initially, he refuses, but by October of 1855, John cannot turn a blind eye to the possibility of another slave state joining the Union, and
Oh no, Roosevelt must commit mass genocide. Oh no.
so he loads up a wagon of rifles, pistols, and swords and heads west to
He has all those weapons, like, bro. Sign me up, bro. If I get all of that, like, bro, whatever side he's on, I'm on it. I don't know what y'all on about.
help his sons. Kansas was primed as a political powder keg ready to explode, and though he did not know it at the time, John Brown would be the one to light the match. On May 21st of 1856, a pro-slavery group sacked the anti-slavery city of Lawrence, Kansas, and the following day, pro-slavery Representative Preston Brooks savagely beat Senator Charles Sumner with a cane on the Senate floor after he'd given an anti-slavery speech. The 1-2 combo
How much do you have to love slavery to, like, beat someone with a stick about it? Like, I like Christianity, but if a person says, oh, I don't believe in God, like, I don't care. It's like, oh, that's your choice. I don't care. I'm not gonna beat a person with a stick over it. Like, that's anger management issues.
of the sacking of Lawrence and the caning of Sumner breaks something inside of the 55-year-old John Brown. His whole life, he had hoped the South would eventually see that slavery was morally wrong. But now he realizes this was nothing but a fool's dream. The so-called abolitionists in the North were all cowards. They do nothing but talk. Slavery must end by any means necessary. If no one else will do it, then he will deliver God's judgment himself. And so, on the
Oh no, he got that sword. Oh, he got that army going. He's preparing. He's about to hit that Fortnite to, I lost it.
The night of May 24th, 1856, John brings a group made up of his sons and fellow abolitionists to the home of pro-slavery settler James P. Doyle and demands that he and his sons come out. Doyle and 2 of his adult children nervously comply, and they are led 100 yards into the darkness. The group of men walk silently in the light of the moon until Brown's 2 sons turn towards the Doyles and draw broadswords. Cold and emotionless, they raise their weapons.
That does not look emotionless. Like, that is pure hatred in their eyes over here. Like, bro, you got that right there. You know it is not emotionless.
And begin hacking their hostages to pieces. Screams fill the night air as John Brown draws his pistol and fires a round point blank into James Doyle's forehead, finishing him off. The Brown party traveled to 2 more houses that night and executed 2 more pro-slavery settlers. John Brown was now a murderer, and this event, known as the Pottawatomie Massacre, kicked off a state-level civil war that would be called Bleeding Kansas. John Brown quickly becomes public enemy number 1 amongst the pro-slavery settlers in the territory, and warrants are put out for his capture, dead or alive. But Brown does not back down, and he leads his anti-slavery militia in
Yo, entire state is against this man and him and, like, what, 6 other people evaded? Like, bro, look, I know this didn't happen right here, but it might have happened. We don't know. But that's crazy.
multiple battles across Kansas against pro-slavery forces, becoming a highly polarizing national figure. By the end of the year, the anti-slavery settlers in Kansas seemed to have turned the tide, and it was looking like Kansas would eventually join the Union as a free state. Leading Kansas had not been easy for John as he lost
W?
one of his sons in the violence, and with the increasing
That's not W. W, Kansas not being a slave, but like losing a son, that's rough. Like, jeez. RIP in chat.
bounties being put on his head, he decides to leave the area as a wanted man. By his exit from Kansas, his deeds had turned him into a household name. Many in the North called him a hero fighting for justice, while in the South, he was branded as a deranged lunatic. But what John Brown planned to do next would make all the previous events appear small in comparison, and it would change the course of American history forever. In August of 1859, John meets his longtime
I was halfway expecting there to be just a black screen. Next episode, 2 weeks later. Oh, I'd hate that. Oh no.
friend, escaped slave and activist Frederick Douglass, in an abandoned stone quarry in Pennsylvania. Now a wanted man, the meeting is done in secrecy with just a few in attendance. After exchanging pleasantries,
That's one
Brown
man.
tells his old friend about a plan he'd been working on for years. Inspired by the story of Moses, who led the slaves out of Egypt in the Bible, and the tales of Spartacus, a slave who had led a slave rebellion against the mighty Roman Empire, Brown believed deep in his heart that the slaves in the United States, if provided the opportunity and proper means, would rise up against their oppressors and take their freedom for themselves. Douglas cannot believe what he's hearing as Brown continues to share his plan to raid the federal armory at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, and incite an insurrection of slaves against their owners. Douglas desperately pleads with his friend not to do this. Attacking a federal building would be a suicide mission. But Brown
He was right. Don't do that.
pushes back, saying that he's now realized his purpose. He is an instrument of God,
Brown.
and this act would serve as notice to all slaves in America that their friends
Hashtag don't get in Brown's way. He's a crazy man. I'm not trying to get in his way.
had come.
I don't want that smoke.
As they part ways, Brown turns to his friend and tries one last time. "Come with me, Douglas. I will defend you with my life." Douglas shakes his head, but an escaped slave who had accompanied him to the meeting is moved by Brown's words and agrees to join him on his mission. Frederick Douglass smiles weakly at his dear
Is he only recruiting old people? Like, bro, look how many gray hairs this is, and he's actively balding.
friends, shakes their hands, and says goodbye. And so, in the dark of the night on October 16th, 1859,
Oh, no,
John
sorry,
Brown
guys.
and
Oh, no.
18 of the 22 men he had brought with him sneak into Harper's Ferry and cut the telegraph lines into the town. They quickly seize the federal arsenal and take the commanding officer, Lewis Washington, George Washington's great-grandnephew, hostage. Everything is
Yo.
going exactly to plan. The arsenal contained over 100,000 rifles and muskets, more than enough to fuel any
100,000?
slave uprising. Now all they had to do was wait for them to come and join them. But instead of reaching the slaves he had hoped for, word of Brown's capture of the arsenal spreads much more quickly to militias in nearby towns, who all
no.
race to Harper's Ferry. By the following day, Brown's raiders find themselves surrounded. He had waited too long for an army of slaves that never showed up, and now he was trapped. Firefights,
This is what we all need to learn. Don't put your trust in people you don't know. Don't even trust the people you do know. I don't even trust my friend RJ. And I trust RJ with my life.
break out, and Brown's raiders flee into the nearby fire engine house with their hostages. By nightfall, President Buchanan orders a detachment of U.S. Marines to Harper's Ferry and commands
Oh,
Army Colonel Robert E. Lee to lead them to retake the armory. On October 17th, after a failed negotiation, Colonel Lee orders the Marines to storm the fire engine house. Within minutes, John Brown was wounded and captured, and 8 of his men, including his sons, were dead. Brown is
Yo,
charged
that's
with
sad.
treason against the Commonwealth of Virginia, murder, and inciting an insurrection. His case is expedited through the courts, and he's found guilty on all charges. When asked if
That's
he had
an
anything to
old
say,
man.
John Brown
Yo, that's an old man.
rises from his seat and eloquently begins a speech, denying any wrongdoing and saying that if his same actions had benefited the rich instead of the enslaved, he would have been rewarded rather than punished. He closes his statement with the
Heavy
following
speech.
words. "Now, if it is
Philosopher
deemed
Brown.
necessary that I should forfeit my life for the furtherance of the ends of justice, and mingle my blood further with the blood of my children, and with the blood of millions in this slave country whose rights are disregarded by wicked, cruel, and unjust enactments, I submit. So let it be done." John Brown was hanged for his crimes on December 2nd, 1859. In the crowd that gathered to watch his execution were U.S. soldiers Stonewall Jackson and Jeb Stuart, men who would later fight for the Confederacy against the country they had sworn to protect. Also watching from afar is John Wilkes Booth, the man who would later assassinate President Abraham Lincoln. John Brown makes no speech that day, but instead hands a small note he had written on a scrap piece of paper to his jailer as he walks up to the galley. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away, but with blood. I had, as I now think, vainly flattered myself that without very much bloodshed, it might be done.
Yo.
And John Brown was prophetic.
John Brown wanted to free slaves, but he just did bad things. It just shows that not all good things are good. What am I talking about? I'm just yapping at this point.
Right. His raid on Harper's Ferry equally stirred the hearts of abolitionists to the north and terrified slave owners in the south, who rapidly began to push for secession from the United States. In just over a year, the American Civil War began, and 750,000 Americans will die in the war to end slavery. As they marched throughout the country, Union soldiers began singing a song they called John Brown's Body as a rallying call. What began as a joke with crude lyrics evolved into a song detailing the life of a man who had given everything he had to end what he considered the greatest sin of his nation. This song was eventually rewritten into the Battle Hymn of the Republic, or as it is more commonly known, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. Gary Plauché. It's 1983 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Gary Plauché is driving his 10-year-old son,
Oh, that's like time skip.
Jody, to karate practice. Jody's been training under his 24-year-old instructor, Jeffrey Doucette, and Gary is proud of how much his son's improved. But at the same time, Gary feels bad for the guy. See, Jeff seems like a good guy, but he's struggling financially, so much so that it's pretty obvious he's been living at his karate dojo. So, wanting to help him out, Gary starts inviting Jeff over for dinner and occasionally lets him stay the night. Over the next few months, Jeff becomes a close family friend. To Jody, it was awesome having a cool older friend around so often. The two start spending a lot of time together, going to movies and traveling to different cities for karate tournaments. And to Gary, it was great that his son had a positive role model that he could trust to keep Jeff safe. But that trust was about to be broken in the most horrific way imaginable. On February 14th, 1984, Jeff asks Gary's wife if he can borrow her car to visit his uncle and if Jody can come along for the ride. She doesn't see anything wrong with this, so she hands over the keys and tells them to have fun.
Trust that man.
I'm nearly 75% of the bottle and loudly shouts, days he struggles, he may never see his Jeff safe. But that trust was about to be broken in the most horrific. Asks Gary. She doesn't see later. Jeff calls and says they decided to stay the night at his uncle's place and will be back the next day. But when the next day comes and goes with no sign of Jeff or Jody, Gary and his wife start to worry that something terrible may have happened. They contact the police, who begin searching for the boy and his instructor. But despite their efforts, there's still no trace of either of them. Hours turn into days, and there's still no...
That man is a zombie, bro. He's actively decaying. Like, bro, look at that hair. What is that hair?
No trace of either of them. Hours turn into days, and Gary's worry slowly turns into dread that the worst has happened. The police soon launch a countrywide search to bring Jody back home. And all the while, Gary can't stop imagining all the horrible things that may have happened to his son. 2 weeks pass with no signs of Jody or Jeff, and the terrifying possibility that he may never see his son again begins to feel very real to Gary. But on February 29th,
Yeah. This is why you have to enjoy your family's company. You never know when you'll never see them again.
Gary's wife receives a collect call from a motel in Anaheim, California. When she picks up the phone, she hears Jody's voice on the other end.
It's the instructor. Oh, no, it's Jody.
Thank God, he's alive! The police quickly trace the call and pinpoint Jody's exact location. 30 minutes later, Anaheim police storm into the Samoa Hotel, where they find Jody with Jeff in one of the rooms. They immediately arrest Jeff and take him into custody. As the officers question him, it turns out that after visiting his uncle, Jeff drove all the way to California and took Jody to see things like Hollywood and Disneyland while keeping him locked away in a motel at night. The very next day, the police take Jody back home to Louisiana. When Gary sees his son step off that plane, he rushes over and is relieved to have him back home safe and sound. Over the next few days, he struggles with the fact that someone he trusted so deeply, someone he welcomed into his home, had kidnapped his boy.
What have we learned from both of these stories? Oh no, it's a villain arc. Oh no, it's gonna be a villain arc. Oh no. But what have we learned from these both stories? Don't trust them. Don't trust anybody.
But the reality of what actually happened turns out to be far more disturbing when Jody is taken for a medical examination. The police soon informed Gary and his wife that Jeff was not the man they thought he was. The examinations of Jody's body showed that while they were in California, Jeff had done some absolutely disgusting things to him. The detectives assigned to the case interview the little boy, and he tells them that Jeff had been molesting him for over a year. He was too scared to tell anyone this entire time because he did not want to lose his friend.
Boy, don't be afraid to lose your friend. You will get another friend. I lost my friend when I was in 5th grade. Now I have tons of friends. Don't worry about that. If you don't do anything where you're scared to lose a friend that is putting you in a dangerous situation, get out of the situation. You'll find new friends. Maybe, hell, even you might share trauma with a person. That's how you find the one.
When Gary hears this, his whole world shatters. He feels overwhelming guilt that he had put his son into such a horrible situation. But soon, this guilt turns to rage, and something inside him snaps. He decides that he cannot allow this monster any opportunity to get away with destroying his son's childhood, and will do whatever it takes to make sure justice is served. Jeff is charged with aggravated kidnapping and child molestation and is held in California while Louisiana authorities prepare the paperwork to bring him back to stand trial. But as the days pass and Gary waits for the criminal proceedings to begin, his rage continues to build, and he soon feels that no punishment the courts could come up with would ever be enough. For days, he visits a local bar, trying to drink his suffering away. And one night, a friend working at a local
Don't drink your things away. I might be young, but I know, don't do that. No matter what, don't do it.
TV station happened to stop by and saw him. After making pleasantries, his friend casually mentions that his newsroom had heard that Jeff Doucette will be flown back to Louisiana on March 16th on American Airlines Flight 595. Upon hearing those words, Gary's eyes widen. He now knew exactly what he needed to do. On March 16th, Gary walks into Baton Rouge Airport disguised with a hat and sunglasses. He stands at a row of payphones in the main corridor and calls his best friend. As news crews arrive to film the return of Jeffrey Doucette, Gary keeps his head turned away from the cameras. Around 9:30 p.m., the police escort Jeff through the airport towards the main corridor. As they near the row of payphones, Gary tells his friend, who is still on the line, "You're about to hear a shot," and drops the receiver. In one fluid motion, he draws a revolver from his pocket, turns and fires a single bullet straight into Jeff's head as he's walking by. The police are shocked as they watch the man they were just escorting tumble to the ground. The officers
Don't do that. Yo, now your son just lost a friend. He's scarred mentally and physically. He's gonna look for a person to get help from. His dad. Oh yeah, his dad killed a person. Don't do that to your son. Don't do that to anybody. No matter how much rage you have, focus on helping. Like, bro.
Rush in and grab the assassin and instantly recognize who he is. One of them screams, "Gary, why? Why, Gary?" as they pry the gun from his hand. Gary doesn't resist as the officers arrest him. Jeff is taken to the hospital in a coma but dies the following day. The assassination was
Justice.
filmed live as it happened directly in front of the local news crews at the airport,
it's on
and the graphic
live.
images of the execution quickly become national news. As brutal a crime as was committed, many throughout the country identified with the father's desperate quest for revenge. Gary is tried for second-degree murder, but accepts a plea bargain in which he pleaded no contest to manslaughter. The judge ruled that there was virtually no risk of Gary committing any other crime, so he's only given a 7-year suspended sentence, 5 years of probation, and 300 hours of community service. He never goes to prison. When he was later questioned why he shot Jeffrey Doucette, Gary simply replied, "If somebody did it to your kid."
Yo, so W. The kid got to keep his father. That's a W.
Kid, you do it too. San Francisco Committee of Vigilance. It's 1848, and a man named Sam Brannon is visiting his newly opened store in what's now modern-day Sacramento. Just a few years earlier, Brannon, a Latter-day Saint, had fled religious persecution on the East Coast and ended up in California in a tiny port town that's now known as San Francisco. In his short time on the West Coast, he had started a newspaper, a flour mill, and now had just opened his first general store. Things are going pretty good for this young entrepreneur, but little did he know that his life would soon be changed forever, as a few rough-looking men entered his store looking to purchase some supplies. These men had come from Sutter's Mill up in...
They're like, yo, we need all your bullets, everything you can to start a fire, rope, and guns. Also a few cigars. He knows what they're planning on. There we go. He knows what they're planning. They're like, oh, he's like, oh, these people about to kill someone. Oh no. He knows about kill someone.
Coloma. They pick out a few goods and bring them up to the counter to purchase. Brandon tells them what they owe, and instead of handing over coins, one of the men opens a leather pouch and pours a pile of gold dust onto a scale. Brandon can't believe his eyes. Who has so much gold that they can pay for things like this? So he makes a trip to Coloma to investigate what's going on at Sutter's Mill. He speaks to some of the workers there and finds out that they found gold in the American River. Tons of it. The men tell him there's so much gold here that all the people in California working together couldn't take it out in 50 years. Instantly, dollar signs flash in Brandon's eyes. But instead of brainlessly jumping into the river to find gold himself, he crafts what is perhaps the greatest marketing stunt in American history. Brandon returns to San Francisco and quickly begins purchasing every single pickaxe, shovel, and gold pan he can find in the area. He ships them all to his store in Sacramento and tells his employees to price these items at extreme markups. He then puts the gold dust he had received as payment into a glass bottle and steps out onto the streets of San Francisco. He holds up the bottle and loudly shouts, "Gold! Gold on the American River!" And the townspeople near him all stop their daily routines and turn to look. He holds out the bottle, and as it sparkles in the sun, he continues to shout his message.
What do you think gold tastes like? Like, you put some liquid in that, mix it up, you got golden drink. It probably costs a lot. But like, what do you think it tastes like? Probably terrible. Those guys got that crazy look in them. Oh no.
Message over and over again. Gold on the American River! Brandon's
Yo, W idea. Oh, wait, so he owns a paper thing, so that means he can spread the news in the town. That's a good idea. Making money off that. Then he has all the stuff you need to mine gold in his store. That's a monopoly. That's a monopoly right there. It's illegal now, but back then, free game. Bro's a genius. 5,000 IQ play. W, bro.
Plan works, and the news spreads through the town like wildfire. In a very short amount of time, nearly 75% of the men in San Francisco raced east to try to strike it rich.
90% actually.
On their way to Coloma, they all stop at the only store with tools along the way, Brandon's General Store in Sacramento. In the first 9 weeks of the gold rush, Brandon makes $36,000, an equivalent of $1.4 million.
1.4 million? Bro, what's in these jars? What's this? Someone can explain what's those jars in the comments, it would be very, very helpful to me. Thank you.
Today, and he quickly becomes the richest man in California. But while Brandon's marketing stunt worked out better than he could have ever imagined, it led to some unintended consequences. News of gold in California spread throughout the world, and by 1850, San Francisco had exploded from a small port town of less than 1,000 people to a city of over 25,000. The massive boom of fortune seekers brought unprecedented levels of crime and—
Yo, let him get up, bro. We think you won. His eyes are going in every direction besides where you are. You can let him go now.
Lawlessness, and the local government with its small police force just couldn't keep up. Gangs of thieves and murderers begin to roam the streets of San Francisco freely without any fear. The worst of these criminals are the Sydney Ducks,
the Sydney Mafia. The Sydney Ducks. We take your ducks. After we take your ducks, we eat them. Then we feed the bones into your throat. We're so cool. Ducks. So cool.
This gang of ex-cons from Australia. They set fires to buildings to distract the police while they loot businesses, and anyone caught in their way often ended up dead. On the rare occasions the police managed to catch them, they just bribe corrupt officials and walk out of jail scot-free. On May 4th, 1851, a fire set by the Sydney Ducks burned down around 2,000 buildings, which was more than half the entire city and caused over $10 million in damages. Brandon watched that fire rip through the city, and he decides that enough is enough. On June 9th, 1851, he brings together a group of well-known citizens and businessmen. He tells them that the police are worthless and that if they want the crime to stop in their town, they would need to take justice into their own hands.
Batman.
Everyone in attendance agrees, and
we
so—
got the Bat family. We got Robin, Red Knight, Batgirl.
On that night, they form a committee—
Jordan. Robin 2.0.
of vigilance to take back their city from these criminals.
Right here.
Conveniently, this committee did not have to wait long to take action. The very next day, a member of the Sydney Ducks steals a safe from a merchant's office. The members of the newly formed vigilante group immediately track him down and hold a public trial. After finding him guilty, they hang him in front of a crowd of spectators.
Yo. Subscribe to me. And also subscribe to this guy's W video. Love it. Subscribe.
News of the trial and hanging quickly spreads through the city. Business owners who've had their shops looted and families who've lost loved ones to gang violence all realize they now have a way to fight back. And within weeks, the committee grows to over 700 members strong.
700?
Over the next 3 months, the committee hunts down every known criminal in San Francisco. They execute a total of 4 men and deport dozens more out of the city. The committee's extreme actions prove effective, and by September 1851, crime has dropped so dramatically in San Francisco that for the first time in years, people begin to walk the streets without fear. The committee members look around and decide their work is done, so they officially disband and hand back control to the local government. But by 1855, San Francisco is worse than it's ever been. But this time, the criminals have gone from the streets to wearing fancy suits. Almost every major position of power in the city is held by corrupt elites who use their influence to protect the criminal activity of their friends. Violent crime rates skyrocket throughout, and more than 480 people are murdered within the span of a year. The police do nothing. Sick of the corruption, a man named James King of William, who, by the way, called himself that to distinguish himself from all the other James Kings in San Francisco, began printing a newspaper called the Daily Evening Bulletin, and begins publicly calling out corrupt government officials. On May 4th, 1856, King writes about a city supervisor named James Casey and exposes him as a convicted criminal who had once served time for grand theft before buying his way into public office. A few days later, he writes another article targeting a man named Charles Cora, a wealthy gambler who shot and killed a U.S. Marshal in cold blood. King demands the immediate hanging of Cora and calls out the court for delaying his trial to protect him. Cora and Casey happen to be friends, unsurprisingly, and not enjoying the recent publicity King has been giving them, Casey decides to fix this problem for good. On May 14th, 1856, James King of William is walking down the street when Casey suddenly blocks his path. Casey menacingly asks the publisher, "Are you armed?" And before King can respond, he shouts, "Well, draw and defend yourself," and unloads a bullet directly into King's chest. King collapses onto the pavement and blood begins soaking through his clothes. Some bystanders rush him into a nearby office where doctors immediately start fighting to keep him alive. Casey is arrested and taken to jail. As word spreads of the shooting, over 10,000 people gather in the streets outside of the building that King had...
10,000? You know how many people that is? I think Azle has less people than that, maybe.
Been taken to, and murmurs begin to sweep through the crowd of a need for a second committee of vigilance. James King dies from his wound on May 20th,
R.I.P.
and just 2 days later, shortly
R.I.P.
after his
James
funeral
King.
service, 3,500 armed vigilantes drag James Casey and Charles Cora out of jail
What?
and hang them in front of the entire city. The Committee of
Dude,
Vigilance was back,
what?
and this time it was bigger than ever. Over the next few weeks, the committee stormed through every government building in the city, searching for evidence of corruption. The vigilantes find a number of rigged ballot boxes, which they displayed publicly as proof of election meddling they had suspected for years. They then not so subtly convince elected officials to resign.
If you knew this for years, then why are you just now acting like that? Why does the person have to die before you act? Oh, they have teeth now. Except for that one. Oh yeah, these two.
From office. In an altercation with a California State Supreme Court justice, a vigilante is stabbed in the neck, and the committee takes the justice prisoner. This causes the federal government to call on a banker by the name of William Tecumseh Sherman to lead the local militia to stop the committee and their insurrection. But Sherman soon found out that most of the local militia wanted to fight for the Committee of Vigilance, not him. And so he quickly resigned, citing the whole fight as a lost cause.
He's like,
The committee's membership rapidly swelled, and within the span of a few months, they had hanged 4 men, deported dozens more, and
Can we
had
do
essentially
this
taken
again?
over the corrupt local government, installing
can we
their
do this
own
again?
political party,
Like-
which they called the People's Party. On August 11th, 1856, having cleaned up the city once again, the committee voted to disband for good. As a final act, 8,000 armed vigilantes dressed in uniform then paraded through the streets of
Yeah,
San Francisco with
uniforms?
cannons
Yo.
and floats as a grand farewell. The
That's literally
committee's
how it's
People's
on top of
Party
the thing.
continued to manage the city until 1867. Oh,
Very
and if you're
cool.
wondering
Good
what
job.
happened to Sam Brannan, the first millionaire of California who started the gold rush, he was excommunicated by the Mormon Church for his participation in the first committee, and later his wife divorced him and left him penniless. Bro could have really used a prenup.
yo, thank you, Serious Justice. So we'll have a link to him in the YouTube video. Say hi, YouTube. Say hi to YouTube. Well, I'm gonna go live in